Today's story is one of the true tragedies that I ever covered, and one of the first really big tragedies that I ever covered. And it goes back to 1986. It was a Sunday, and it was August 31st of 1986. I was at home, and I got a call that there had been a plane crash on the approach to LAX. And so I grabbed my gear, and Cerritos, California, which is Orange County area, was where it actually went down. And when I got there, a lot of yellow tape had not even been put up. I got there pretty early. Getting calls from my bosses and saying, because I had to check in once I got there and find a payphone. And I said, just get as much stuff as you can. Just keep filing and filing and filing. And then Bob Fuss called me and said, the second day they're going to concentrate on the air traffic controller, and and they're giving me all these instructions. And so I got all that in a hurry, and then I went right to the scene. And I started, because there was no yellow tape, or very little anyway. The cops and all the other agencies, fire departments, had not really gotten there fully yet. They were still, a lot of them still on their way. I got there pretty early. And so the yellow tape was up, so you could wander the scene. And basically what had happened was this Aero Mexico flight with almost 90 people on board, including the crew, was on its approach. And a small Piper Cup airplane with, I think it was two people on board, flew into the same airspace and collided. And as one was approaching, one was taking off, and it caused them both to fall to the ground. And the Aero Mexico plane landed, or didn't land, but crashed into a neighborhood. So it wiped out homes. It was a Sunday afternoon, late morning, early afternoon. And so people were in their homes. Some were getting up, getting ready to go to church, or just relaxing, getting ready, to maybe watch some football or some basketball on television, in their backyards, cooking, just reading their newspapers and whatever, kids playing in the neighborhood, and this plane crashes right in their neighborhood and just wipes it out, just destroys it. And of course, the plane kind of exploded upon impact. Fires were caused, so you had everything scattered everywhere. And the thing I remember most about that scene and the tragedy of that scene was, I had my tape recorder and my microphone in hand, and I was just walking through the area by myself, away from everybody else, talking to my tape recorder, describing what I was seeing. And the worst part was seeing a little girl's shoe, just one, seeing luggage that had split open, seeing one piece of luggage that had not split open. Would have been a great ad for their luggage that lasts through anything. And as I'm walking along, and nothing had been covered up. I didn't see any bodies. Bodies were pretty much disintegrated in this thing. As I'm walking along, I look down and I'm describing what I'm seeing. I looked down, and on the ground, I saw something. I wasn't sure what it was until I took a close. I didn't get real close, but I took a closer look, and I realized it was somebody's intestine. And as gross as that is, I had to kind of work through that. And in talking about into my tape recorder and setting the scene, and there it was, just on the ground, somebody's intestine, no other body around, just the body part, which was pretty disgusting. And the first time you ever see something like that, and hopefully you never do, but in your job as a reporter, things like that do happen. And that was the most unnerving thing. That, and seeing little girl's shoe, and then what was left of a child's doll, a baby doll, and walked through the scene and continued to describe, and then went back and put things together and filed. And then the second day was, and I had gone down there. I'd gone down there every day for several days. And the second day, like Bob Fuss said, they were concentrating on who was at fault. And eventually, after the hearings and everything, the final report came out that it was the fault of the air traffic controller, which in many cases, that's what it usually is. Either they weren't paying attention or they missed something, and they allowed two planes to occupy the same airspace. And that's what happened. The small plane flew right into the big one on approach, and caused it to, fall to the ground. And 86 people lost their lives, and including 15 on the ground. And it was just a tragedy. And it was one of those things you're going to cover. It wasn't my first plane crash. My first plane crash was actually in Bakersfield. It was a small plane. I remember leaving. We got word that a small plane had crashed out near the scales. The scales are about a couple of miles before you actually reach the Grapevine. If you're familiar with that area, you go up the Grapevine over the hill into Los Angeles. Well, you're in Kern County. I raced in my car, my company car, raced down the 99 freeway, saw an opening in the fence, and I looked out in the field, and there was a truck, and there was some guys out there, and who had seen the crash, or had come in, and I drove in, and it was interesting because the first responders weren't there. I had beaten them there. I was there before the fire department, the cops, anybody, except for these three guys who were either driving by or were in an area, near the scales or whatever. And so I walked up, and there's this, what's left of a plane, and obviously fallen to the ground and burned. And I looked at one of the guys, and I'm kind of looking at the scene. I looked and I said, well, I guess the fire department, the coroner's already been here to take the body. And one guy looked at me and goes, no, he's right there. And he pointed to the plane, and sure enough, it was this charred body of this, turned out to be a 65-year-old guy who was, hit a downdraft. He was trying to make it over the mountain. He was heading to Burbank, and hit a downdraft and went straight down. And here he was, just in that same position, in what was left of his seat, holding on to what would have been the flight wheel, steering wheel, or whatever you call it in an airplane. And I looked down, and sure enough, there was this charred body still in that position. And that was my first. That wasn't my first dead body, but it was my first burn body in aircraft. And these are the things maybe you've turned this off by now because it's kind of disgusting to you, but it's the way it was, and the way it is. I mean, you cover those stories, and they touch you emotionally. They play with your psyche. And the big thing about it is you have to just put it out of your mind. Sorry about that. You just put it out of your mind, and you are covering a story. You're doing a job where you're going to relate what you see as a reporter and as a person, as a human being, to people who are watching or listening, in this case, to what they want to hear. And people want the details. They really do. It's, people always say, well, why are they covering car chases, or why are they covering freeway chases? I personally don't like freeway chases. I wouldn't cover them, but people tune in for that. They say, I'd never tune into that. And yet the first thing they do is turn on the radio or turn on TV. I got to watch this. And they watch it religiously. They'll sit there for an hour and watch a car being chased by the police on the freeway to see what's going to happen. It's just human nature. It's what it is. And as reporters, that's what you have to relay, and giving them and putting it in some kind of context. And that's the whole thing of when you do a story that's tragic like this. The toughest ones are when kids are involved. I'll be honest with you. I mean, those are the toughest ones for me to cover. I had kids, I have grandkids, so it's, and anytime you get children involved, it's always tough. And that's when the Aero Mexico little girl shoe, for instance, which is still in my mind. I can still see it there. and it never goes away. It's always going to be there. But and a lot of stories are like that. But that's just what it is. And hopefully you get through that, you suck it up, and you do your story and you do your job. And that's what it is. So hopefully tomorrow I'll give you a lighter and brighter story to digest if you digest this one. But that's kind of where it's at. Thanks for joining me again and putting up with me on this one. And I'll have another good story for you tomorrow. Thanks.